On this week's episode, eBay has made some updates to their payment terms of use. There's more news from the United States Postal Service, and I sell a whole mess of books. What is up, Galaxians? Welcome to episode number 256 of the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. My name is Ryan, and I will be your host as we go through just a little bit of reselling news this week. Only a couple of things to really talk about. The big one earlier in the week was Depop announced that they were eliminating seller fees, and they are now creating a new buyer fee, which can be up to 5%. I did cover that pretty extensively on the YouTube Live that I did on Wednesday. If you didn't catch that, or if you're primarily a listener to the audio podcast, I will link to that video in the show notes in the video description below, so you can go and check that out. But it's a pretty big announcement from Depop, kind of following in the footsteps of what Mercari has done regarding selling fees. And I discussed with the live audience on that particular day kind of my thoughts on what might be the future of selling fees on some other sites. So you'll want to go and check that out if you have not seen that. But we do have a couple of things to cover in today's news. So this first one from eBay, this article appeared over on Value Added Resource, eBay payment terms of use update that goes into effect on July 23rd. So eBay has posted an update to their payment terms of use, which is dated July 16th with an effective date of July 23rd, which as of recording is like 2 days from now. So this will be on Tuesday. This goes into effect, giving just 1 week notice and no proactive announcement to inform buyers and sellers of the new terms that govern their use of the site. Users, of course, are encouraged, as always, to read the entire updated terms carefully, but here are a few excerpts highlighting some important changes and additions, and hat tip again to Value Added Resource for breaking out these changes. eBay and all these sites generally make it pretty difficult to decipher what the actual changes are. So hat tip to Liz over at Value Added Resource for doing this for us. Identity verification. eBay has added additional wording to include that they may verify identity and other personal information when you enroll in managed payments, which is the way they handle payments now, and that they may use both credit and consumer reporting as part of their verification. The old version read, "You authorize us and our affiliates to check information you provide to us, including by verifying the existence of your bank account and obtaining reports from or comparing your information to third-party sources. Such third-party sources may include, without limitation, banks, credit agencies, data brokers, and other service providers." The new version says you authorize us and our affiliates to, quote, "verify and evaluate information you provide us, including by verifying the existence of your bank account." And this is in addition, verifying your identity and other personal information, obtaining reports from third parties, and or comparing information you provide to us with information provided by third parties. Such third parties may include, without limitations, banks, credit, and now consumer reporting agencies, data brokers, and service providers. So there's some pretty big updates in there about what they may actually be looking at and how in-depth they may be going. So again, it's their sandbox. If you want to play, you got to kind of go with this, but you do need to be aware that this is a pretty significant change. They've also made some changes to disputes and seller protection. The new payment terms opens the door for eBay to provide different levels of seller protection against chargebacks and disputes depending on which country-specific eBay site is being used. The old version read, "If you accept the dispute or if the buyer's financial institution decides in favor of the buyer, the respective amount will be refunded to the buyer's original payment method and charged to us. You must reimburse us for such charges unless you are eligible for seller protection, in which case you are not held liable for amounts refunded to the buyer." So if eBay has essentially given you seller protection on an item and the credit card chargeback rules against you, eBay would protect you in that case. The new version says if you accept the dispute or if the buyer's financial institution decides in favor of the buyer, the respective amount will be refunded to the buyer's original payment method and again charged to us. There's no change to that part. However, the second part does change. You must reimburse us for such charges unless you are eligible for the seller protection policy provided by the eBay affiliate, which provides the eBay services to you, in which case you are not held liable for refunds amounts refunded to the buyer. So if you're on eBay Canada or eBay UK or one of the affiliate sites, not actual ebay.com, it will be up to that particular group to decide whether or not you qualify for seller protection. So this doesn't really affect, I guess, ebay.com sellers, but if you're on one of those affiliate sites, this now provides I guess, a different level of coverage for you. Additionally, the old version said if you have met your eligibility requirements for and fulfilled all your applicable obligations under the seller protection policy, you will not be held liable for any amounts to be returned to buyers due to eBay Buyer Protection Program claims, disputes, or unauthorized transactions with eBay spendable funds. The new one adds again some more verbiage. If you have met your eligibility requirements for and fulfilled all your applicable obligations, again, under the seller protection policy provided by the eBay affiliate, which provides the eBay services to you, and then it reads the same from there. So kind of the same thing if you're selling on one of the alternate sites, ebay.ca or UK. There's now some verbiage in here that applies to you selling specifically on that site. The other change, and I don't know that this was really new, 1099Ks are now going to be electronic by default. The old one said eBay may be required to issue information returns to you related to payments made to you during a calendar year, such as IRS Forms 1099. You accept these payment terms of use and continued use of our payment services evidence your agreement to receive any information returned, such as Forms 1099K or any other Form 1099 required to be issued to you electronically. You may request an electronic copy of Forms 1099 by downloading the form where it is made available to you in Seller Hub. You can choose to receive paper information returns mailed to you by opting out of paperless-only deliveries. The elections will be effective for current and future years unless you change your election. So I feel like they had done that already last year, so I don't know that that is specifically new. I've gotten mine electronically for years, and I just print it out myself. So let me know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube what you think of that. But so that's what's going on over at eBay. Just some quick changes to their payment. I always feel like you need to know these things. I don't know that there's necessarily anything there that will really impact anybody, but you should be aware anytime they make these changes to their terms of service. Moving on to the post office, just a couple of quick things here. This article appeared over on E-commerce Bytes. The Inspector General did an audit of USPS Ground Advantage, and the article says there was good news and bad news in the audit of the new USPS Ground Advantage, which, as we all know, replaced Retail Ground, Parcel Select Ground, and First Class package services back in 2023. First, the good news, they say package volume did not drop. During the first 9 months Ground Advantage was offered, the Postal Service experienced nearly a 3% increase in package volume nationwide, from nearly 3.8 billion to more than 3.9 billion from the same period the prior year. Although overall package volume increased, volumes of certain product categories declined significantly. For example, the volume of priority mail packages decreased by more than 23%, from over 591.6 to about 454.5 million during the same period. That actually does not surprise me in the least, because Ground Advantage covered a lot more stuff that people used to have to send by priority that they were now able to send with this other package service. So the fact that priority package shipments dropped is not, frankly, any surprise to me. However, there is bad news, and what it is probably will not surprise you if you have either shipped or received anything in the mail for the last, year and change. The bad news says the auditors found that while the introduction of Ground Advantage simplified the flow of packages through the postal network, service performance goals were not met for the three services during that period. Additionally, USPS Office of the Inspector General said delivery units did not always follow guidance to separate packages when preparing mail for dispatch, making identification of packages that require priority processing difficult. I can tell you from my experience, and you can, again, if you're watching on YouTube, let me know in the comments what you see when you drop packages off at your local post office. But there are times, not a lot of them, but there are times where I will go into the post office with my stack of stuff. I've got my one scan sheet and I've got 20 or 30 packages. Most of them are media mail. There might be some ground advantage, and occasionally there'll be some priority there, and they literally all get dumped into one big cardboard gaylord. There is no effort at the front end to separate those at that point, which is something that they used to do. I actually talked to the guy at the desk about that at one point, and he said that was their new direction, was to not do that pre-sort at the retail counter. It was to put them all in one bin and that they would be sorted further down the line. So let me know what your experience is with that. But they are all, in my case at least, going into one box. Failing to achieve intended efficiencies could impact customer satisfaction and the Postal Service's ability to increase its market share in the growing package industry. That is a big one. UPS on lower weights is now, in many cases, very competitive on price. I probably will continue to use mostly United States Postal Service just because it's more convenient for me. And I've not had any significant numbers of package disruptions, but I know a lot of you have. And there are obviously particular regions in the country that are really, really struggling to get their mail delivered. So if they want to capture this business, they've got to get this thing sorted. Unfortunately, some specific performance data in the report is redacted. I guess it's top secret. Who knew? With the anniversary of USPS Ground Advantage coming this month and with the busy season just months away, feel free to share your experiences with the service. Thumbs up, this article asks. You can feel free to comment here as well. Let me know what your experience has been with Ground Advantage in the post office generally over the last few months. Speaking of, this is the last bit of news we got for this week. The United States Postal Service has announced that they're going to suspend air service delivery in Montana in favor of ground transportation. I've hit on this on a couple of occasions recently where they have made decisions to consolidate hubs or eliminate types of service in a particular area. And this one just dropped on July 19th. They're dropping air delivery service in Montana. Now they say, of course, that this is actually going to be an improvement. I don't know. You can let me know what you think about that. The United States Postal Service is apparently ending its contract for air service that supports priority and express mail in Montana and focusing on ground transportation, which of course prompted the ire of Senator John Tester. Tester sent a scathing letter to Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, who I'm sure is quite used to getting those scathing letters because he gets them quite a bit. I write today to express my concerns about the sudden decision to end air service for priority and express mail in Montana, he said. At a time when Montanans are already reporting unacceptably inconsistent delivery from the United States Postal Service, cutting air transportation will further degrade mail service in our rural state. Once again, it appears that USPS is turning its back on rural America and attempting to solve its budget woes on the backs of our nation's rural citizens. Strongly worded. Tester said he's been notified that the United States Postal Service gave its longtime contracted air service provider, Alpine Air of Salt Lake City, just 1 week's notice that their contract with the United States Postal Service would not be extended and air service across Montana would be terminated. Kim From, a USPS strategic communications specialist, said the change is consistent with the Postal Service's 10-year strategic plan of optimizing the use of air and surface transportation throughout its network. That's been a big push for them to not rely on air service if they don't have to, if ground will be as effective. It's hard for me to wrap my head around the idea that in a state the size of Montana, ground would be as effective as air in some cases. But she added, just to be clear, the Postal Service is not suspending any mail delivery or products such as Priority Mail or Priority Mail Express. She said it's simply switching to more reliable surface transportation. The 10-year plan's 2-year progress report states that reducing air service saves the Postal Service money, which, of course, that makes absolute sense. If they can ship it on their trucks rather than flying it all over the place, of course, they're going to save a little money. Cost savings, they say, have also been realized by reducing our dependence on air transportation, optimizing our ground transportation network, improving employee staffing and scheduling. You'd probably get some arguments about that one. Eliminating redundant processing operations and expanding the use of automation for processing packages, the report states. It also says that hiring air service contractors is expensive. The Postal Service has refocused our use of contracted air transportation since we do not own a private fleet of airplanes, the report says on page 20. Before our modernization plan began, we were beholden to the complexities and inefficiencies of the airline industry for transporting mail long distances to meet our service standards. This dependency was especially evident during our peak season when weather disruptions used to make air transportation system very unreliable, they conclude. The post office, of course, has faced criticism from elected officials in Montana and elsewhere, Georgia being a big one right now. The senator, I think it's John Ossoff, has been all over Louis DeJoy for mail service disruptions down in Georgia. But this one in Montana has been because of plans to consolidate Missoula's sorting and delivery facility and move some mail processing to Spokane. Tester and Senator Steve Daines were both opposed to that plan earlier this spring after much criticism. DeJoy did announce that the plan to move some mail processing from Missoula to Spokane would be postponed until at least January. We talked about that, probably a couple of months ago, that he has essentially, for the time being, put all of the remaining consolidation plans on hold until at least January of 2025 to try to get things to be working a little bit more smoothly. So that's what's going on over at USPS. You can let me know what you think of that. They are really struggling to get stuff done and get mail delivered. So good luck to them. That's going to put a wrap on the news. Let's get into some interesting what sold. So again, as always, if you follow me over on Instagram at Galaxy CDs Rocks, I did talk about kind of back to normal last week. I had 96 listings sold, 105 new ones posted. So a pretty busy week here at the Galaxy. Some pretty interesting stuff that went out of here, both on Etsy. I think actually all three. I think all three are represented today: Etsy, Mercari, and eBay. So let's take a look here. This first one is on Etsy. Lala Rook, an Oriental Romance by Thomas More, published by C.S. Francis and Company back in 1854. This was an old book. 5x7 hardcover, a little bit of wear on the cover, a little bit of tanning of the pages, but overall in pretty good shape. I had it listed for $24.99. I'm still running my 10% off sale over at Etsy, so it sold for $22.49 plus shipping. Paid $2.89 in fees. My cost of goods sold. This was part of the big antique book lot that I completed about a month ago, so I'm into this one for 91 cents. The order total, $29.36. My net walkaway profit, $18.69. There we go. Mercari, Story of Rapid Transit by Beckles Wilson from the 1913 Library of Valuable Knowledge. This was this was from a big lot of books. This was the part of the 15,000 book lot. And there was a whole series of these, story of this, story of that, from the Library of Valuable Knowledge, but it was not a complete set. And normally in that case, what I do is I just try to sell them off individually for a little bit of a premium for somebody that's just looking for that one book to complete their collection. That's what we did here. This item sold for $25 with free shipping. As a reminder, or if you're new here, I do not charge shipping on Mercari so that I can ship on my own because I don't like the way they handle media mail. So I raise the price by what I expect to have to pay in shipping. So that's built into the price of the book. Customer paid a total of $26.38. Of course, there were no fees to me. The customer did pay some additional fees because Mercari has now moved, as we talked about, the fees to the buyer. Shipping cost was $5.38. My cost of goods sold on this thing was 4 whole cents. So this $25 sale netted me $19.58. Back over to Etsy, The Story of Tobacco in America by Joseph C. Robert. This was a second printing illustrated hardcover in its dust jacket from 1952. If I'm not mistaken, this was also an ex-library book. Had the Brodart, the clear mylar cover over the dust jacket, so the dust jacket was in pretty good shape. Pages were a little bit tanned, but overall this was in good condition. I had it listed for $34.99. It sold for $31.49. Total was $39.36 with shipping and tax. This is another one from that big lot, the gift that just keeps giving. So I was into this for 4 whole cents. I paid $5.45 in an offsite ad fee in addition to the $3.80 of the regular Etsy fee, but still managed to make a net total of $21.69 on this book. Finally, eBay on the board. Bird Dog Training Today and Tomorrow by E.R.M. Shelley from 1947. This was a G.P. Putnam and Sons illustrated hardcover in really nice condition about how to train bird dogs back in the 1940s. Really cool old book. This was also part of that 15,000 book lot. $34.99 plus shipping. The order total $42.79. I paid $6.16 in fees plus shipping. My total costs $14. This $34.99 item netted me $28.79. Another one on eBay. This is one I actually just picked up. This didn't take long to sell, and I probably should have priced it a little higher, but it was a quick flip, and I wasn't into it for very much. Armco in Pictures and Fact from 1921, the American Rolling Mill Company in Middletown, Ohio. This was an illustrated leather-bound book. Pretty unusual. Armco was a big steel manufacturing company in Middletown. It's been around for a century or more. This was a book about the history of them up to 1921. So kind of a cool old book. I had it listed for $39.99 or best offer. I received an offer of $35 within, gosh, probably less than 2 days of having listed this. And I went ahead and accepted it. I paid $6.24 in fees. My cost of goods sold was $2. I picked this up at an estate sale, like I said, gosh, not even 2 weeks ago. Listed and sold pretty much right away. $35 sale. My net profit, $26.76. Back over to Etsy. Another book from that big book lot. So another one for 4-cent cost of goods sold. Bear by Marion Engel. This was a 1976 publication by McClelland and Stewart. This was a Canadian printing hardcover with its dust jacket. So there was a U.S. printing from another company, and there were quite a few of those out there. But this one being printed in Canada by a different publisher, I put it up for a little bit more money just to see what it would do, and it sold. $39.99 was my listed price. With the sale over at Etsy, it sold for $35.99 plus shipping. I paid $4.22 in regular fees, and unfortunately, this one sold through their offsite ad program, so I paid another $6.09 in offsite ad fees. Yay! $35.99 with total costs of $18.67 led to a net profit of $25.64. Still not a terrible flip, but that offsite ad fee, I know I talk about it every week. It just really gets under my skin. Continuing with Etsy, it was a big week on Etsy. Forest management plan for Watson Springs Forest, Greene County, Georgia from 1951. This was a hardcover that I picked up at an estate sale maybe 6 months ago for $2. So a lot of times there are no comps. There is nothing. If you search for forest management plan for Watson Springs, you get nothing. If you search for Watson Springs Forest, I don't think you even get anything. And it's one of those things where I'm willing to take a gamble because it is such a unusual piece. A lot of people would look at this and say, gosh, there's no listings, there's no comps, there's no sold comps, there's nothing in product research, there's no evidence whatsoever that this is an item that will ever sell. And I'm like, you know what? I can get it for $2 and I'll throw it out here for $50 or $60 and just see what happens with it. And in this case, it took less than 6 months to sell. I had it listed for $54.99. With the discount, it sold for $49.49 plus shipping and tax. No offsite ad fee on this one, so just $5.60 in fees. My cost of goods sold, like I mentioned, was $2. So this $49.49 sale actually netted me $41.89. I will take that. Back over to eBay. This is a couple of books from that big antique book lot fairly recently. Alexis de Tocqueville, Democracy in America in 2 volumes. This was a 13th printing from 1980, hardcover with its dust jacket in reasonably good condition. These are fairly difficult to find in a complete set and with their dust jackets. So I paid 91 cents a piece for these, $1.82 I had into it. Had it listed and sold for $79.99 plus shipping and tax. The order total, $92.83. I paid $12.89 in regular fees and $6.50 in promoted listings or promoted general, whatever they're calling it these days. But the general promoted promotion. So anyway, $6.50 there. Cost $6.88 to ship. Cost of goods sold again at $1.82. So this $79.99 sale netted me $58.78. If you see these books out in the wild, particularly a complete set with both volumes, pick them up. Couple more books from that same sale. So 2 more for 91 cents a piece. These sold over on Etsy. I actually have 3 volumes of this. This customer only bought volumes 1 and 2. The History of the World by John Clark Ridpath. These did have another title on the title page, but this is what was on the cover, so that's how I listed these. These were leather-bound illustrated books from 1885. I had all 3 of them listed for $49.99. With the discount, they sold these 2 to one buyer for $89.98 plus shipping. Customer paid $13.63 for combined media mail shipping. So their order total was $110.86. I paid $10.31 to Etsy in fees. I was able to ship these in a box using Ground Advantage Cubic for $7.25. So I made about $6 and some change on, I'm sorry, that's tax. $9.82 was the cost of shipping. So I made about $4 on the shipping. Cost of goods sold again, $1.82. My total cost $29.20. So this $89.98 sale in the end netted me $81.66. And now your flip of the week. This was a fun one. So again, I tend to buy books that maybe a lot of other people would just not even look at. I was at a sale. It's probably been 8 or 9 months ago, and there were a lot of old textbooks on material science, like composite materials and detecting defects in composite materials. It was the last day of the sale, and there were literally probably 100 or more of these books. And I started looking them up, and they're, again, not a lot of sold comps. It's something that the sell-through rate, by traditional reselling standards would probably have been pretty poor. But like I talk about quite often here, media to me is a numbers game. You have to have the right book at the right time for the right buyer. And this is a case where taking a chance again on a bunch of inventory that everyone else was passing by led to a pretty remarkable sale. This one buyer purchased in this one order 11 different books, many of which were from that particular purchase. Some of them were not. Some were things I had just picked up more recently, but all told, this customer's actually purchased 13 items because they came back the next day and bought 2 more. So again, everybody gets an opportunity to run their business however they want. I'm willing to gamble for what I can generally pick these books up for on the chance that long tail in 6 months or a year or 2 years, I will have one of the very few copies of this particular book available and it will sell. So I'm not going to go over all 11 of these. They were all essentially from the same type of books. They're all material science and engineering type textbooks. So the order total for these 11 ended up being $226.49, which is $20 and some change a piece. Shipping, the customer paid $15.85. His order total was $261.03. I paid $39.82 in fees. Again, this was a promoted listings general ad fee of $20.70. Shipping was $15.31. I saved a little bit by shipping these by Ground Advantage. So again, another case where Ground Advantage, even on a heavy shipment, can be cheaper than media mail. My total costs ended up being pretty steep on this one, actually, $110.34 because of the double whammy on the fees. Net profit was still $150.69. My cost of goods sold total for these 11 books was $15.82, so not quite $1.50 a piece, $1.40, give or take. So essentially, I made 10x my money on this deal, and that is a number that I would take pretty much all the time. I don't have any problem with that. I don't have any problem with long tail, hanging on to these books for a while just to see what they will do. And in many cases, they end up doing quite well if you can be patient. I understand completely. Not everybody is interested in being patient. Not everybody wants to. Not everybody has the storage capacity to be able to do long tail and store books. But it's just another example of opportunity that exists out there. I was in a Facebook group earlier in the week, and someone was talking about, sellers talking about the things they sell and thought that it was just rubbing it in the face of people who are struggling right now because a lot of people are reporting slow sales. And my take again on this, as I told that person, was that I don't do this. I'm not showing you a $220 odd sale to brag. I'm showing you that there is opportunity out there. If you will go get it and create it in whatever way works for you, there is still great opportunity to make really good money doing this, whether it's books or electronics or whatever it is you want to sell. You can make your own luck. I had a coach once that said, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And again, in my case, having all those books, having taken the time to list them and create good listings and have them available to ship very quickly has led to terrific business for me. So you can let me know what you think of that little editorial comment or anything else you saw or heard on today's show. If you got something out of this, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button if you're watching on YouTube. Let the YouTube algorithm know that this was a productive use of your time and mine. And of course, feel free to share this with any of your like-minded reselling friends as well. As always, I love to hear your comments. And now we're going to call it a day. I hope everybody had a great weekend. And now it's time to sell. Thanks, guys. You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.